Hi, thank you for joining me on this journey into discovering the unconscious mind. About 45 years ago, my wife Judy and I graduated from the School of Social Work and we're ready to change the world. Our first job ended up in Churchill, Manitoba, and we discovered very quickly the high needs of many people as they're on their life journey. I used to think that change only took willpower, and if you thought and worked hard enough at what you wanted, you could create anything. And what I quickly discovered was that that didn't work for me, but I thought I was just the weird one, and everybody else could just use their willpower to create change. When I first got up to Churchill, I discovered that in fact I wasn't the weird one, that we all had challenges in making the changes inside of ourselves. And so I started on a journey to try to figure out, how do people create change? How do we redefine ourselves in the world? And that journey took me to Hawaii and other locations around the world where I started to learn about neuro-linguistic programming, also known as NLP, and timeline therapy and hypnotherapy. Those are all methods that work with the unconscious mind. And the unconscious mind was a new thing to me. I wasn't quite sure how it worked. But what I did discover is that essentially all learning, all behavior, and all change is unconscious. And so I'll go into a little bit more in detail about the unconscious mind and how to create change. But first I'd like to share with you some of the trainings that I offer. If you look at the pyramid on the screen, you'll notice that at the bottom of the pyramid it says Discovering the Power Within and Shamanic Empowerment, from Fire to Phoenix. Those are three of the personal growth trainings that I offer. So in order to create change in the world, we first need to be the change. And so it's important for us to clear out those things that have been holding us back, that have been stopping us from achieving that which we can achieve and desire to achieve. And so these trainings are not at all about learning how to help others. They're really about how to create the change within yourself, how to heal yourself. There is some components that you can obviously use when you're working with others. And in fact, everything that I teach, I use in these trainings. But these are really about personal growth. Now, the other trainings, which are more about learning how to help others, of course, also have a large component of personal growth, of helping yourself to move through those issues that have been holding you back in your life. So if we look at the second level of this pyramid, you'll notice that it's the practitioner level. Those trainings are called the Personal Life Mastery training, and they are comprised of two specifically different trainings. One is called Mastering the Unconscious Mind, and the other is called Understanding the Unconscious Mind. Most of the time in Winnipeg, when I do these trainings, these are done over 4 weekends, each of them. So in total, it's 8 weekends of training. Mastering the Unconscious Mind, I usually do every fall, and it goes for 4 weekends in the fall. It is about learning how to work with the unconscious mind. It's about creating change while using more of a formal trance, helping the client to go into a relaxed state. Now, hypnotherapy, which is what this training is about, hypnotherapy is about working with light to medium states of trance. And so we don't want the conscious mind to be asleep. We want the conscious mind to be present too. So this is about helping clients, individuals, to move into that quiet state of mind where their conscious and their unconscious minds are communicating together. So it is a certification in hypnotherapy, and it's a certification in timeline therapy, both at a practitioner level. Timeline therapy is a program or a process that was developed out of neuro-linguistic programming by Tad James and Wyatt Woodsmall. And I had the pleasure of learning timeline therapy with them directly when I traveled to Hawaii. Understanding the unconscious mind, which is the other component of this personal life mastery or practitioner level training. Understanding the unconscious mind happens in Winnipeg every winter for 4 weekends. And it is about communicating with the unconscious mind, but without doing a formal trance. So it's about everyday communication. How do we influence the unconscious mind with the people that we're communicating with? How do we help people to create change? And I'll talk a little bit more about the NLP model of communication and change in a few minutes. So the next level up on this particular journey is a journey into the master practitioner training. So at the practitioner level, at personal life mastery, what we're doing is we're working with the preliminary or first level of information about change, NLP and hypnotherapy. It is a practitioner level certification in neuro-linguistic programming, in hypnotherapy, and in timeline therapy. Understanding the unconscious mind, as I said, is communicating with the unconscious mind in our everyday communication. And it is about creating that environment where we can influence other people's behavior through our language, both verbally and non-verbally. Understanding the unconscious mind, when combined with mastering the unconscious mind, is the practitioner level of neuro-linguistic programming. So both are necessary for neuro-linguistic programming practitioner level to be granted. Then if we go beyond that, for people that are serious students that really want to understand and learn about how to help others and themselves create change, then there's the professional life mastery training. And the professional life mastery training is a 15-day training. This training is all in a row, 15 days in a row, and is the advanced therapy or the advanced information on timeline therapy, neuro-linguistic programming, hypnotherapy. And so is a master practitioner certification in those three modalities. In addition, and mastering or professional life mastery, I begin to start to work with the use of energy, because ultimately our bodies are energetic, and in order for change to be complete, we need to change the energy of our body. And therefore, as a therapist, we need to help to influence the energy within our clients' bodies. And so I start to teach a Hawaiian energy system called Ho'omana Loa, which is similar to Reiki in that it's a symbol system. And this system allows the practitioner to send energy across the room to their clients in order to help them to create the changes that they desire. The Hawaiians talk about our body as being like a river of energy. And in our natural state, we have that energy, that river flowing through us. And we're in a place of balance and wholeness. And then as life goes on, we lock away negative emotions, we lock away limiting decisions, and we create log jams in the river that blocks the flow of energy. So sometimes the energy builds up, the log jams blow out, and we have this rush of energy, so we might be flushed with anger or sadness or fear. At other times, the water builds up and erodes a new pathway, which become our habits and our new patterns of behavior. And so, in a metaphoric sense, what we do in therapy is we're blowing up those log jams. We're getting that natural flow back again, and we're shoring up the riverbank. And so, using the Ho'omana Loa symbols helps us to get that energy shifting and moving in the body. In order for change to be complete, there's two things that are necessary. First, we need to learn the lesson. We need to understand what happened back where we created those behaviors. We need to understand why that happened and to learn new ways of responding to the world. Sometimes those are things that we already know before we even go into therapy. We know that we've had an abusive life, for example, and that we had to protect ourselves by shutting down. We might be aware of that information. The second part, though, about healing, and this is really the gift of hypnotherapy, the second part is that we need to release the emotion that is attached to those memories in the past. Because it is the emotion that is the glue that sticks those old beliefs together. I'm not good enough, I can't do that, nobody likes me, whatever those beliefs are, it is the emotion. And so ultimately, for change to be complete, we need to learn the lesson. We need to experience or be aware of that past experience from a different light. In NLP, we sometimes call that reframing. We also need to release the emotion that is connected with that. And so in the professional life mastery, we take the tools that we learn in personal life mastery and we expand on them. We also spend more time working with the physical body. How do we help the physical body to create change? Clearing the symptoms of our physical health. And then at the top of the pyramid, for those people who really want to expand their skills in helping others, is the internship program. And that's called Therapeutic Mastery. And the internship program is about helping you, the therapist, to really refine your skills. There's an incredible amount of information that comes in personal and professional life mastery training throughout all of those trainings. There's a lot of information about how to understand other people's behavior, about how to communicate with them, how to help them to shift and create change. And that information needs to be integrated into your everyday life and into your therapeutic practice, if that's where you intend to go. As I said earlier, I graduated as a social worker, but I did not feel that social work gave me the ability or the learnings to really help people change. It helped me to understand how people were the way they were, but it didn't give me those tools to really shift those beliefs that were locked in place. It wasn't until I discovered NLP and hypnotherapy that I really learned how to help those changes take place. So in the therapeutic mastery, it is really about studying clients and working directly with clients. So students will bring tapes, videotapes of their clients into the session, and we'll look at it. We'll do it in slow motion or in stop action, and talk about what could have happened here. What is it that the client was communicating at the time? And we also watch videotapes that I've done with clients, live videotapes that are that we can look at in slow motion and evaluate and expand on our abilities. So there is a wide range of possibilities if you're interested in really learning about change and learning how to create the changes in the world that you desire. So what I'd like to talk about now is the NLP model of communication, because this puts all of the information together about practice. So if you were to look at this this chart that's coming onto the screen, what happens is every day, every second of every day, we receive information. On this chart, it shows that that information is coming in through the eyes, but we receive it through all of our senses. And as the information comes in, we process it through what we sometimes call is our personality. Now, excuse me, another way of defining that would be to call it our unconscious mind. And our unconscious mind filters the information, and it is made up of our past experiences. So through our past experiences, we create a model of the world. This is the way that the world is. And that model of the world is expressed through our beliefs and our values. And so our filters are also our beliefs. I don't believe I can do that. I don't believe this or that. I do believe. Whatever we believe to be true becomes true. It is not about what is true, it is about what we believe. Our values are also parts of our filters. That forms the way that we spend our energy in the world. What do we like doing, and what is it that we do most of the time? And so it's within our values that we define how we spend our energy, how we spend our time. In NLP, we have two modalities or two systems that we study. One is called meta model and the other is called meta programs. And what that is that's our deep structure, our deep underlying personality. And so things like, am I motivated towards goals, or am I motivated away from pain or punishment? Things like, do I see myself as a victim in the world, or do I see myself at cause and empowered? So these filters, this part of us which filters the world, filters the communication that comes within us, does three things. It distorts information, it deletes information, and it generalizes information. So it may distort information by, for example, someone might say, I really like that dress that you're wearing. And you might distort it and go, I wonder what he really wants. Or we might delete information. So you might, someone might say, hey, you did a really good job. But in your mind, you don't even hear them saying that. You think that you didn't do as well as you could. And so you actually don't even hear what is being said to you. Or we might generalize information. You might have had like a great day, you've done everything really well, and someone gives you a suggestion of something you could have done differently, and you go, nobody ever likes what I do. I can never do anything right. And we generalize it. So this process of distorting, deleting, and generalizing information actually changes the communication that comes in, changes our understanding of that communication. And it leads to three things. So we will first have a thought. In NLP, that thought is called an internal representation. So we will have a thought, and we think through pictures, we think through sounds, and we think through sensations in our body. So we will have some kind of thought. We will have some kind of emotional response, or move into, in NLP terms, it's called an emotional state. And we will have some kind of physiological response to the information that is coming in. Now, the interesting thing is that these three things are interconnected. So by changing any one of those, changes the others. And so this is what self-help is about. Self-help focuses on changing our thoughts. So we can do visualization, we can do affirmations, we can say different things to ourselves. This helps to change the way that we're feeling and change our physiology. We can also work with, self-help also works with changing emotions. So do things that change your emotions. Go with friends and talk to friends. Think about the good things in your life. Think about what's happening for you and about all of those positive things that are going on. It also, self-help talks about changing our physiology. Go jogging, do yoga, do exercise to shift your thoughts and your emotions. And all of these things work, but these work in the area of the conscious mind. We have to use our willpower to make those changes. And so, most of the time, our behavior is driven unconsciously. And because these three things, our thoughts, our emotions, and our physiology, lead to our behavior. And so if we were to just consider that chart once more, if you think of, say, somebody with a phobia. So let's say somebody has a phobia of snakes. So somehow they get that communication into themselves, either they see it or they hear it or whatever. They see a snake, and the snake goes through their filters. So it goes through their past behavior, past experiences rather, that says snakes aren't safe. And so it leads to the thought, perhaps, of a time when they weren't safe. And then that thought leads to an emotional response of fear, which leads to a physiology of tightening up their body, getting afraid, and the behavior of running away or freezing or somehow responding negatively to that vision of the snake. And so where therapy is effective is that therapy doesn't give us strategies to use our conscious mind to create change. Hypnotherapy helps us to actually change our filters. It changes our filters. And so once we do hypnotherapy, we shift those filters so that that past experience of being afraid with the snake no longer holds the fear. The old belief that snakes aren't safe is gone. And so we see the snake, it goes through those filters, and we have a thought that might say, I wonder if this snake is posing a danger or not. If it's posing a danger, I'll get out of here fast. If it's not, I'll just amble away and ignore the snake. And so it is working with the unconscious mind, changing those filters, that is what deep change is about. And really, change in my book is not worthwhile if I have to do something to maintain it. It's only worthwhile if I can unconsciously, naturally be different in the world. Now, another component that's working here with us is to recognize that all of our learning, all of our behavior, and all change is unconscious. All of our learning, all of our behavior, and all change is unconscious. And so what that means is that if we really want to change, we need to change at the unconscious mind. Now, if we consider this about learning, the process of learning is a conscious process. So we practice and practice and practice. So when you first learn how to drive a car, when kids are first learning how to walk, they practice and they practice and they practice until finally that learning is unconscious and we no longer have to think about it anymore. It just happens unconsciously. Similarly, our behavior is unconscious. Unless we engage our conscious mind and consciously control our behavior happens unconsciously. And I know you've had those times where you go, sheesh, why am I doing that again? I thought that I'd stop doing that. And all of a sudden, here's this old habit or pattern coming back again. And so, similarly, all change is unconscious. For us to change, we need to create a new pattern in the unconscious mind. And that's the gift of hypnotherapy and timeline therapy and NLP. Now, if you consider us as individuals, there are three components to ourselves. And I've talked about two of these components already quite substantially. The first is our conscious mind. And the Hawaiians call our conscious mind the middle self. And the conscious mind is really where our willpower resides. It is the conscious mind that when the alarm goes off in the morning, that we get ourselves out of bed. That's the conscious mind that draws us to that place. It's the conscious mind where we think about what we want in our life and we define our goals and our plans and our outcomes. That's through the conscious mind, a very, very powerful and important part of ourselves. Now, underneath the conscious mind is the unconscious mind, and the Hawaiians call this the lower self. Now, the unconscious mind is an amazing instrument for us. It's amazing because the unconscious mind is where all of our emotions reside. It's the domain of our emotions. It's the domain of our beliefs and our values. And it runs on automatic pilot. And so when we're not using our conscious focus, the unconscious mind is in control. And so we also have a third component to ourselves, and that's called the higher conscious mind. The Hawaiians call the higher conscious mind the higher self. Now, these three minds are interconnected. In the Western world, we tend to think that we can move from the conscious mind to the higher conscious mind, but in fact we can't. What we have to do is we first have to go down to the unconscious mind. The conscious mind links only to the unconscious mind, and through the unconscious mind to the higher conscious mind. And these arrows show one direction, but they actually go in both directions. So from the unconscious to the higher conscious, and from the higher conscious to the unconscious, and similarly with the conscious and unconscious. So if we want to communicate with our higher conscious mind, which is our essence, that's the perfection of who we are. Our higher conscious mind is our deep inner self. And we sometimes lose touch with who we really are, because our unconscious mind is full of lies and false beliefs that hold us back from connecting with the higher conscious mind. The unconscious mind can get all murky, filled with all of this negative energy, and therefore energy doesn't travel back and forth. Now the higher conscious mind sends energy down to the unconscious mind. We call that, in Hawaiian, we call that mana. Sends energy down into the unconscious mind and then up to the conscious mind. Now this energy, if the unconscious mind is full of negative energy, it's full of junk, it's kind of like a swampy, murky area. And so the clear, clean, fresh water that comes down from the higher conscious mind can't get through to the conscious mind. And so the goal, I believe, in our spiritual growth is to heal our unconscious mind so that we can move through the unconscious mind and have total access with our higher conscious mind or our deep spiritual self. So the goal of clearing the unconscious mind through therapy is a valiant goal, and one that I hope that you will join me on this journey to help others to clear their unconscious mind. Now, let's talk a little bit about our negative emotions. Our negative emotions all have purpose. We call them negative because we don't like them being around, but they come to us to give us energy to respond to the world in a certain way. The problem with them is that we often will lock those emotions away from the past, and we don't let them process. We don't use them in the way that we could. And so let's look at these emotions. When we have anger, the purpose of anger tells us that somebody is violating our boundaries. And so we want to tell them to back off. We want to, or we want to get away from there if we have to. But we want to be able to stand up for ourselves and say, hey, this is not appropriate. However, in the past, let's say we're a young child, and some adult interferes with us in some way, hurts us in some way is violating our boundaries, we can't tell them to back off because we're just a child. We don't have the ability to. And perhaps if we did let our anger out, we actually would get hurt more. And so our only choice at the time is to lock that anger away. The problem is when we move on in life and we're adults and we still have that same anger locked away, that anger starts to distort our vision, our experience in the world. So anger has a positive purpose. It's to defend our boundaries. And it's only positive when we can use it and access it. Now, if we think about sadness, Sadness is another very common emotion that we experience. And the purpose of sadness is telling us that we're holding on to something that we can't have anymore. We're attached to something that we can no longer have. And so, for example, this might be that I'm attached to a relationship. I moved when I was a young child, and I left my friends behind, and I'm sad because I've lost that connection. And so I'm trying to hold on to that connection. But the sadness is coming to me to tell me to grieve the connection, telling me to let that sadness release, let go of that attachment so I can be free to get attached to new relationships, to new experiences. Sometimes our sadness is just something like the loss of a dream. I used to hope that my family would be this wonderful, loving family, and it never became that. I used to hope my childhood would be supportive and positive, and it wasn't there. And so we have sadness around that. So when sadness comes into our experience, it's coming to tell us that we need to let go of something that we're holding on to that we can't have anymore. Now, fear is another emotion that is pretty common. And fear is about telling us that we need protection. It's about safety. It's about helping us to make ourselves safe in the world through fighting back or getting out of there. And so with fear, again, there are times when we lock that fear away because we're stuck in a fearful environment and we can't get away from it. And so our way to survive back then is to pretend that we're not afraid, to put it away, or to distract ourselves, or to do something and not deal with that fear. The problem is that the purpose of fear is to protect us, to keep us safe. But the reality is that when we have old fear locked away, that fear actually does the opposite. And so we have three responses with fear: fight or flight, which are the healthy responses, or freeze, which is the unhealthy response. That freeze response is the response from that people get if they have locked away fear that they haven't released, that they haven't got out of the way. And therefore, when we are in a situation of real fear now in our life, we can't respond to it in a healthy way because we've got all of this old stuff and we freeze. Now, the fourth major emotion is guilt. And guilt is present to let us know that we have gone off of our path. It's not about us having gone off of other people's paths. It's about us having gone off of our path. The purpose of guilt is to remind us of that, so that we get back on the path again, so that we get back doing what we need to do. However, most of the time, we respond to guilt in the Western world because we feel that we've gone off of somebody else's path. We're not doing what somebody else wants or needs. And so it's really not about us going off our path. It's about violating somebody else's desires, which may or may not be part of our desires, part of our values and our beliefs. And so old guilt is only important until we get the lesson, until we learn that we've done wrong, that we could have made a better choice. And then, once we've got that message, we don't need the guilt anymore, because now we can move on. The problem with holding old guilt is that, according to Chineo Sans Kumalai, who was the last kahuna in New York City, according to Chineo Sans Kumalai, our mind is like a fishnet. What we hold in it, we attract to us. Now, this is also spoken of in the law of attraction. If we hold guilt, we draw guilt to us. We draw those experiences to us. Similarly, if we hold sadness, fear, or anger, we draw those experiences to us so that we can release that from our system. we can move that out from ourselves. And so, in conclusion, I would like to talk about some pioneers in the healing world. There are several people that have been very impactful in my life and in the global community. The first is Deepak Chopra. Deepak Chopra has helped to marry science and spirituality, has helped to look at the deeper parts of ourselves and how our emotional and spiritual well-being affects our body. He's also a scientist and has been studying quantum biology for some time. And Deepak Chopra, along with his colleagues, in their study of quantum biology, discovered at one point that our body, every cell of our body, redefines itself, becomes new and changed, refreshed very quickly. Now, it used to be common knowledge that it took 7 years for every cell of our body to change. But now, what we know is that it goes much faster. In fact, most things change much, much quicker than that. In fact, everything changes quicker than that. The longest might be up to a year for our bones. What Deepak Chopra discovered was that, in fact, our stomach lining, every cell of our stomach lining is replaced every 48 hours. And so, studying that, Dr. Bruce Lipton arrived on the scene, and he looked at that information and he asked himself the question, how is it possible that anybody then with an ulcer could have an ulcer for longer than 48 hours? And so he studied the body, and in his conclusion, what he found was that every cell of our body is made up of the same raw material. And all those cells come together in a certain way to form organs. And so he asked himself, how is it possible? What is it that creates the consciousness to bring this raw material into molecules and atoms and cells and organs? How does that happen? And his conclusion was that there is some consciousness within us. There is some consciousness within us that tells our body what to do, how to come together. And so his conclusion was that our body has the blueprint of our health now. Our unconscious mind has the blueprint of our body now, and the higher conscious mind has the blueprint of perfect health. Similarly, Dr. Paul Goodwin from Alaska State University, he's a neurophysicist, he looked at the experience of emotions in the body. And what happens to emotions that are not allowed to process within the body? And what his conclusion was is that unexpressed emotion are locked in the body in a neurologically separate way. So it's like they're functionally separate, that there's a balloon inside our body that holds the various emotions. So there's the anger balloon and the fear balloon, the sadness balloon. And that balloon then disrupts the integrity of our body, disrupts the flow of energy in our body. So if this space were our body and message was coming from the light over here to the wall over there, and it came across our neurology and it hit one of those balloons, then it would get deflected somewhere else and it wouldn't arrive at where it's supposed to. So this speaks to the importance of releasing the emotions that are locked away to allow our body to flow and respond in a healthy, natural way. Another group of people that were pioneers in the body-mind study were the Symingtons. They were a husband and wife team that were the directors of a terminally ill cancer ward for young patients in Houston, Texas. And in their experience, they landed in on this award to give it some direction, because things were not working too well in that space at the time. And what they found was that the staff were very bureaucratic with the patients, that they weren't connecting with them, that they weren't there with them emotionally, which is understandable when you're working in an environment where a lot of your patients are dying. But what they decided is that they wanted to bring some positive experiences into the life of the children that were on their wards. And so they developed an art program where kids would go and they would work with all kinds of art media and just create things. And as this started in process, the staff, as you know, most adults do when kids do a drawing, would ask them, well, what's that? What are you drawing? What's this about? And a lot of the time, the drawings would indicate some kind of conflict or problem. So there'd be a battle, and the bad guys would be beating the good guys, or there would be a river, and it would be blocked up, and it would create a desert, or those kinds of things. And so the staff started asking them, well, what would be needed so the good guys would win, or so that the desert could grow again? And so the kids started using the art to show the solution, to bring in the super fighters, and to blow up the river, and to plant seeds, and all of those things. And interestingly, what the Symingtons discovered is that as the kids started doing that in their art, they actually started getting healthier. Now this sounds too amazing to be true, but it is absolutely true. It's been written up in the American Journal of Medicine at least 3 times, different studies in this area. And so the Symingtons gave us the gift of really recognizing that what we think we can create within ourselves. Also, another medical doctor is Dr. Gert Hammer. Dr. Hammer is a Austrian, and he, several years ago, lost a son in a tragic car accident. And about 2 years after that, he developed cancer. And as he started considering that, he reflected on the fact that he was totally healthy before his son's death, and wondered if there was something within the trauma of losing his son that led to the cancer. And so he embarked on a study of 10,000 cancer patients. And what he discovered is that within 6 months and a year before the onset of cancer, some traumatic incident happened in most cancer patients' lives. And that trauma created a spot in the brain, a lesion in the brain. And the space where that lesion was related to where the cancer was. And that when those patients received therapy to heal the traumas from the past, those lesions actually disappeared and the patients healed. And so another dramatic experience or scientific study that shows that our mind does affect our body. And finally, a teacher of mine, Dr. Tad James. Tad, in his studies of neurolinguistic programming, as he was learning about that, he developed a process called timeline therapy. And from my experience, timeline therapy is the most effective way of healing traumas from the past. It's the most effective way of changing our beliefs and creating healthy new lifestyles. And so it is timeline therapy that is the main therapeutic tool that I teach in my trainings, and that I use in my private practice. And so, as you can see, there are countless benefits of hypnotherapy, timeline therapy, and NLP. And we're at a critical point in our universe right now. There's all kinds of trauma and danger and threat happening around us. And so I challenge you to be the change that you want to see in the world. And I hope that if you're interested in helping others, that you will also join me on this journey of learning and understanding. So thank you for visiting today. And I'd just like to leave you with some contact information so that you can find me in the future, should you wish to connect with me. On my website, there's a lot of information, and I hope that you can enjoy perusing it. Again, thank you for being here today. Bye-bye.